thing. And sweet as pie. But she's just...
I love her, Dad. She makes me happy.
Oh, I'm sure she does, son. But happy is not all a marriage is about. Don't get me wrong. Your mother and I want nothing more for you to be happy. But you must remember, you're an only child. It'd be up to you to advance the family name in this region, acquire additional tracts, and most important, uphold the tradition of having the most lavish parties ever.
I think you got that part covered, Dad.
Yes, I do, son. But I won't be around forever. It'll be up to you to carry on the family name and traditions. Are you sure Emily is the one to do that with?
Yes, I am.
Mary, I am not happy. You know, Jake's a nice looking fellow and all, but that family, they're just not my kind of people.
They don't have to be your kind of people, dear. They only have to be Emily's kind of principles. What is it exactly you have against the Colonel and his family?
Well, there it is, right there. The Colonel? The Colonel indeed. I remember when he went off to the war. He was back home in 6 months' time. His father threw this big party. Introduced him to everybody as the Colonel. And no one questioned it. It's stuck ever since.
And they don't have any air. What is that? Captain Reese was never even in the forces, and Judge Hart was never even a lawyer. And Stella is always very gracious at church.
Stella Hathaway was a very fine girl. Too fine for the Colonel, if you ask me. You know, I once overheard him say that you must marry up financially.
Oh, Stanley, I'm sure he said that in jest.
He has never shown any sign of emotion or concern for her, and he's always in Memphis at the Peabody Hotel without her.
This isn't about Stella and the Colonel. This is about Emily. She loves him, Stanley.
Always marry up financially. That was why the Colonel objected to the marriage. Stanley and Mary Ballard were respectable, but their wealth was nowhere near the Colonel's, especially after Stella inherited her father's assets. Now, the Colonel was well known for his lavish parties where there was no hint that prohibition was the law of the land. The most beautiful maids from surrounding plantations were hired to serve and tend to every wish a guest could have. For entertainment, there were 3 bands. 2 were colored and a violinist. These were rather regular events for the Colonel.
Last time I'm gonna ask something. You sure about this?
Yes, Dad, I'm sure.
Okay then. I'll contact the Ballards. I'll be in charge of the wedding. Won't cost them a dime.
Dad, it doesn't have to be like that. Emily and I just want to get married.
It'll be a June wedding at the Roosevelt Hotel in New Orleans. We'll rent all 500 rooms. The ceremony will be in the blue room.
Dad!
Nothing but the best for my boy. I've already hired a wedding consultant. Got a doctor on retainer in case any of the guests take ill. I've got hairstylists, floors, bakers, seamstress, all lined up. This is going to be the wedding of the decade.
He's renting all 500 rooms at the Roosevelt Hotel? This is a terrible way to start a relationship. We could have thrown Jake and Emily a beautiful wedding right here.
Well, of course we could, dear, but Roosevelt Hotel.
Oh, that reminds me of the time when Jake was 18. Remember the Colonel bought that Stutz Bearcat, and he wrecked it within just a few months.
Oh, I remember. But no one was hurt, dear, and the Colonel bought Jake a new one.
Well, that's my point. That bothers me, too. People like that tend to cave when things go bad. I mean, you come to a point where you just can't buy your way out of trouble, not even the Colonel.
It is a bit distressing that Emily doesn't even know her bridesmaid.
Yeah. Nicola, you understand? No, I don't understand. June 10th, 1927, the wedding of the decade.
The Old Testament tells us that God put a rainbow in the sky as a promise that he would never again destroy the world by flood. In May of 1927, some doubt was cast upon that promise. The Mississippi River levee at Mound Landing collapsed, and life in that region would be forever changed. Hundreds would die. 600,000 people were displaced, some never to return. Water would flood the Mississippi and Arkansas Delta for a width of 60 miles and a length of 100 miles. The wedding of the decade was in question. Now, the colonel determined that the Southern Railway was open from the Delta to Winona, and there it connected to the Illinois Central Railroad, which went from Chicago to New Orleans. The wedding party and the guests would then travel by train. 3 extra cars were attached in Memphis, and another for the guests would be added in Jackson. The entourage was on, and the revelry began on the train.
You sure about this, Emily?
It'll be fine, Daddy.
So a lawyer in Louisiana is going to perform the wedding, and the minister's just going to stand by?
It'll be fine, Daddy.
You know, it sounds sacrilegious to me. What's the matter?
I'm not feeling well.
It's probably all this foolishness. I don't blame you at all.
What's going on?
Something's wrong!
Get this in doctor. Help me stop the train and get a doctor.
In true Colonel fashion, not one, but 2 of Brookhaven's finest doctors met the train. They both agreed it was likely her appendix and she could not travel on. She must be immediately moved to the clinic. There wasn't even time to send her to Jackson on the next northbound train where there were better medical facilities. For one of the few times in his life, the colonel could not control the situation. He used his influence to keep the train waiting at the station for over an hour while a decision was made.
Your daughter's appendix is ruptured. Her life is in peril. We must operate tonight. We'll do the best that we can.
Thank you, doctor. We'll be right here.
Me too.
Most Allard guests have gotten off the train. Some got rooms here, some preparing to go back home. Our guests are continuing on to New Orleans, and so are you. I'll expect you back on that train in 10 minutes.
I'm sorry, sir. I must proceed to New Orleans. I'm sorry.
By this time, word had spread through the town of the beautiful young girl on her wedding trip who lay ill and most likely dying in their town. Crowds began to gather at the clinic. Dr. Harrington addressed the crowd with Stanley by his side.
Fellow townsmen, I'm going to start off by being honest with you. Emily is critically ill. We're just doctors. We are not doctors. Due to the fact that her appendix is ruptured, she's exposed to bacteria that can, and in most cases, is fatal. In fact, I haven't heard of many patients surviving this. I've had some, but most don't survive this type of occurrence. I tell you this because I beg you to go to your nearest church, to your home. Get down on your knees and pray for Emily. If she survives this, it will be due to the will of a higher power. Please pray for Emily. If she survives this, it will be to the will of God. Let no man take the credit.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you for your prayers.
By the time that Emily was out of surgery, the wedding party had checked into the Roosevelt. 16 steamer trunks were delivered, filled with clothing for the wedding party alone. A brass band played Dixie as the guests filed into the lobby, and waiters swept through the room with trays of Sazeracs and gin fizzes. The wedding was 2 days away, but the party had begun.
Her fever's 105. She may not make it through the night.
Oh, my baby, my baby.
Is everything all right, sir?
No, by God, everything is now.
What do you mean? We have done everything to your express instructions.
The bride will not be released from the hospital in time for the wedding.
Oh, I am so sorry, sir. So, all of this is to be canceled.
No!
Sir?
I'm the surrogate bride. You heard me? Find the surrogate bride. This wedding will go on tomorrow as planned. Cost is no object.
Oh, but sir, that is such an unusual request.
Just make it happen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There, she'll do. Spend whatever it takes to make her look decent.
You there. You are the seamstress that was sent over by E.H. Holmes, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is your name?
Beatrice, ma'am. Is something wrong?
No, nothing is wrong, Beatrice. Where are you from?
Raised down in the bayou of Plaquemine Parish. But I live here now.
Well, what did you do in fact?
Worked in the cane fields.
Loosen your hands. Oh. Well, where did you learn how to sew?
Here. In a Catholic girls' rooming house.
Well, Beatrice from Plaquemine, come with me. We have much to discuss and not a lot of time to prepare.
I've come to cure Miss Emily.
Get out of here, Mossy, and take that filthy gourd with you.
Can't make me. You let me see Dr. Harris.
He'll be here shortly.
I'll wait right here.
Marcy, what are you doing here?
I come to cure Miss Emily.
How do you propose to do that?
I've got my potion.
You're not going to listen to this crazy devil worshiper, are you, Doctor?
I don't know. It depends on what she's got.
I'll tell him now. I won't tell him. He don't believe me. I got boiled bark and sassafras. Boiled it a whole day. Dropped a chicken feather in it to make it act quick.
Okay, Marcy, go on, do it.
Doctor, you're not going to let this quack give anything to this girl, are you?
Preacher, with all due respect, you've been praying over her for 2 days. I've done all that I can do and nothing has changed. She is dying. Do you hear me? She's dying. You pray to the Lord and ask Him to intervene, and you do not even accept the way in which you're going about this. Be of little faith.
Doctor, let her have a potion. Preacher, let's just pray that it works, and then we'll give God the glory.
I'll be back later with some more. This time, I like features. That's Dr.
We need to pray for a miracle.
Now, the bride and groom dance will take place right here. You may as well practice some.
You
Our
mean
Father, who art in heaven,
like this?
hallowed be thy name.
You're a lovely dancer.
Thank you, sir.
Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done.
Sir, this gown is very full. You will not be able to hold her quite so closely.
I'll manage.
On earth as it is in heaven.
And where will the ceremony take place?
Oh, right here, sir. There'll be a flowered arch, and the official will be here, and the two of you will be right here.
Give us this day our daily bread.
And how do we know when to leave?
Well, when the official says, you may kiss the bride.
And forgive us our trespasses.
I think that's enough. I think you've both got it.
Yes, I think we do.
And lead us not into temptation.
Well, now all we need is a miracle.
Amen.
Jake!
the day after the wedding.
Oh, there you are. They're waiting for that linen in laundry.
Yes, I'll get right to them.
Beatrice, I hope you understand what's happened to you. Nothing. Nothing at all. You were paid for a job and it's over.
No, ma'am, it's not over.
Yes, it is. You are a seamstress from Clackman. That's all.
That's right, but I have some money now. I can enroll in Miss Dixie's school for lady refinement. I can be more.
All the training in the world will not get you a step on the Mississippi Delta Society ladder. You have to be born into it to be accepted. You're partially accepted if you marry into it. You are an outsider, and you always will be.
No, ma'am, you're wrong. He likes me. I can tell. And I like him too. And the clothes, and the food, and the champagne. I liked it all. And I will have it again.
On Sunday morning, the news was all over town that it looked like Emily was going to pull through. Prayers of thanksgiving were offered, without one mention of Mossy. That afternoon, the train from New Orleans arrived and Jake got off. The Colonel continued on.
Oh, darling,
Oh,
how I missed you.
me too. But you're here now, and that's all that matters.
He does seem to be genuinely fond of her.
Of course he is, dear. He loves her.
Well, he still should have been here.
Oh, Stanley.
You know, I guess it'd be too spineless to stand up to the Colonel's his own fault. We can give him another chance.
Here's the happy couple. Now on to more pleasant ceremonies.
In New Orleans, Beatrice had a mission. She would make a better life for herself. She learned French, then Latin, and also took English, math, and just enough science to sound intelligent. She worked as a kitchen maid at Antoine's, learning the finer points of dining and how to properly present a meal. And finally, she became a volunteer at Charity Hospital and learned the essentials of nursing. She then waited for an opportunity.
I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may now kiss your bride.
And thus, Jake and Emily began their married life together. During Emily's recuperation, they lived in 3 rooms in the Inez Hotel in Brookhaven, paid for by the Colonel, of course. And 6 months later, they returned to a newly remodeled home in the Delta. It was not as large as the Colonel's home, but it was certainly a mansion by today's standards. And in that home, the couple celebrated the birth of their first child, Roseanne, on July the 3rd, 1928.
Oh, Emily, you've made me so happy.
Me too. Let me hold little Roseanne. Coochie, coochie, coochie. You are the most beautiful girl in the Delta. Yes, you are. Nothing but the very best for you. Let me take her to see your mother. She hasn't been feeling well lately, and this'll cheer her right up.
The Colonel treated his granddaughter just like he had treated his son. For her 3rd birthday, she was given a prize stallion. The Colonel had it brought in from New York, and along with the horse came a host of trainers capable of teaching the techniques of riding. The home of the Colonel and his wife was more than just an occasional thing. It was as if it was Roseanne's second home.
Jake, I don't like how much influence the Colonel has on Roseanne.
Darling, you must admit, he loves you dearly. There are just some days where you just don't feel the greatest.
Well, I do feel like we have some help around here with you better. I I want someone educated with social skills. I want a governess.
Well, fine. Place an ad in local papers as well as Memphis and New Orleans. Will that make you happy, do you?
Yes, Jake.
There was no shortage of applicants, and it was no accident that Beatrice applied. She had kept up with the family as best as she could by reading the out-of-town news in the Picayune. There was a social page that covered the state of Mississippi, especially the Delta. And when she saw the ad, she knew it was her opportunity.
Your resume looks very promising, Miss Beatrice Russo. Your name does not sound familiar, but I do recognize you. I just don't know where from.
It was at a wedding, sir. In New Orleans.
Oh, right. Emily, this is the surrogate bride my father hired on when we had your surrogate.
Oh, no, the coincidence. You will do just fine. Can you start immediately?
Yes, I can.
Good.
So? Now, you will call me Mr. Anderson, and you will call my wife Mrs. Anderson. Is that understood?
Of course. I think this will work out just as I planned it.
A woman has an uncanny sense when she is being lustfully watched by a man. It is a natural-born instinct. And when sensed, she has two options. One is to totally ignore the situation, and sooner or later the lustful viewing will cease. On the other hand, she can respond. It is a game, and it has been played for hundreds of years. If she is interested, she can move, walk, or hold her head in a certain way. For over a year, this coquettish game was carried on without Emily having the slightest idea. And it went no farther than flirts. It was business as usual.
Miss Russo, come here, please.
Yes, Mr. Anderson. Is there something I can do for you?
Miss Anderson's going Christmas shopping to Memphis. She'll be at the Peabody for 4 days. Roseanne will be in New Orleans with my parents, and would you like to have a drink with me, Beatrice?
Oh, Mr. Anderson. Can you make a Sazerac?
Sure I can. We are not working. Call me Jake.
Of course. Jake.
I want to dance with
They spent 3 nights together. He would turn back the bedclothes on his bed and ruffle the sheets. All this just in case someone should unexpectedly stop by. And then he would go upstairs to her bedroom. He made her think she was the only person in his life, and her anticipation of a bright future blossomed.
Jake, I'm home.
Oh, wonderful, darling. How was your trip?
Exhausted. I just want to rest a while.
Of course. Miss Russo?
Yes, Jake. Mr. Anderson. Mrs. Anderson, you're home.
Russo, take Mrs. Anderson's luggage and packages to her room and unpack them.
Yes, sir.
Now, let's get you a little more uncomfortable.
Over the next few days, Jake showed no sign that Beatrice was anything other than hired help. If anything, he was short with her, almost to the point of being cruel. It was as if he were punishing her for an indiscretion in which he was at least an equal contributor. She reasoned that his behavior was just a way to keep his wife from being suspicious.
Beatrice, come here! Look, has made arrangements for her father to see a doctor in New Orleans. She'll be gone with Roseanne for a week, and now, what are you drinking?
I knew it was all just a ruse.
What?
Nothing.
It was the best week of her life, and she wanted it to be the best for Jake also. Somehow she believed that she could love him and was loving him better than Emily. She did not know what the future would hold, but she would be content to get just what little she could of him. After all, she liked her job and she loved Roseanne. She would not be jealous of Emily. Emily was his wife. But Beatrice knew she had a place in his life too. This arrangement continued for 3 more years. Their time together was 3 or 4 times a year, and how she looked forward to it. She even considered getting pregnant just to have a permanent spot in his life.
Jake, how could you after all these years?
Emily, I didn't mean to hurt you like this. Trust me.
Trust you? How could I ever trust you again? You ruined us.
My love, I'm sorry. It won't happen again, Emily. Look at me.
Don't touch me like this. Don't touch me.
She knows. She finally knows.
Miss Rousseau, I'll be taking Roseanne with me to my father's for a time. He's not feeling well. Please pack our bags.
Yes, ma'am, right away. And I hope your father gets well soon.
What?
Nothing.
In joyful anticipation, Beatrice waited for Jake that night. He did not appear, nor did he appear the next night. In fact, on the 3rd night, he went to Greenville. Returning in the middle of the night, Beatrice hurried down the stairs to find him drunk.
Oh, Jay. Where have you been?
In Greenville. Sit down, Beatrice. We have to straighten things out.
Of course. I missed you terribly.
Emily knows that I have been having an affair.
I've been waiting for this day.
No, I will not give up my mistress in Greenville, no matter what Emily demands.
What?
My mistress in Greenville.
Your mistress in Greenville.
Don't make me repeat myself to you.
Jake!
However, I will be discreet and not visit her in Greenville, but bring her back here instead when she's out of town, and you will have my cooperation! That's all you have to say about it?
The infatuation was over. She had to change her plan. Now, Emily did return home, and on the surface, everything appeared normal. Roseanne was getting older and could be sent to boarding school. Beatrice had heard it discussed. She did not want to be caught with any surprises, so she scanned the paper looking for other employment. Nothing looked good, and so she decided to stay where she was until they asked her to leave.
Beatrice, you have been such a value to our family that we could never repay you for your services. You do know, however, that Roseanne will most likely be enrolling in boarding school in the fall. We have not yet decided whether it'll be New Orleans or Memphis, but our hardest decision has been what we should do for you. And we have an idea. Jake's mother has been diagnosed with cancer. Would you like to go to work for Miss Stella and the Colonel? They are begging for you to come, and you'd be such a comfort to the Colonel at this time. And he's willing to pay you even more than we do. You'd be nearby, and you can visit when you like, and see Roseanne when you come home. What do you think?
Yes. Yes, I would like that very much. I'll go pack my things.
Beatrice would use any means to get revenge on Jake for his indiscretions. She felt that they were intentionally planned to hurt her. She also never forgot what it was like to work in the sugarcane fields or in the tailor shop. She would not return to that life. Meanwhile, at the Colonel's, Miss Stella's health continued to decline, and within 6 months she was confined to bed and kept sedated most of the time.
You are such a comfort to me.
That's what I want to be.
Beatrice had lived in the home with the Colonel and Stella for almost a year when Stella passed away. 2 days after the funeral, the Colonel went to St. Louis on business. He took Beatrice with him. 3 months later, they were married.
How embarrassing. My father and the governess?
Who could imagine carrying on with a help like that?
Beatrice, how could you?
What?
Nothing.
In just over 2 years after the marriage, Beatrice gave the Colonel a beautiful baby girl, and the Colonel gave both of his girls anything they wanted. This added to the resentment that Jake had for his father, and their relationship did not go well after that. Then, in 1947, after 6 years of marriage, the Colonel took ill, and he died. At a suitable time, Jake met Beatrice at his father's attorney's office in Greenville. Now, Stanford Potter was not only his father's attorney, but he was also Jake's.
Jake, I'm going to read the Colonel's last will and testament, but I want you to know you're not going to like it. It is, however, his wishes, and he was in a sound mind when we drew up the papers.
What are you talking about, Stanley?
Well, in essence, Beatrice will inherit all of the Colonel's worldly possessions, including real estate, livestock, and all the crops in the field. You and Emily will receive the home you live in and 400 acres. Roseanne is to receive $10,000.
But that can't be right.
I told you you wouldn't like it.
Mr. Potter.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, and Jake?
Beatrice would occasionally return to New Orleans. She would check into the Roosevelt Hotel and request the very best suite. She could be seen dancing with younger men in the Blue Room. Beatrice was still a graceful beauty. And every December, however, she would spend a week at the Peabody Hotel, buying lavish Christmas gifts for no one but herself and her daughter.